Hey guys, Bound to Divide here with Ableton Tips, and today we're going to be making a melodic techno style loop, and it sounds like this. Okay, so the first thing that we've got here is the bass channel, and if you want to check out the Midi so you can follow along, I'll just open it up here and we'll zoom out. Okay, so you can see it's basically divided into two sections, this drop. We have the first section which goes from bar 17 to bar 25, and that's just little 16th notes that are repeating on A, so we're in the key of A minor. And then in the second half we start changing harmonies, so we go here, we're going A down to G and then down to E, and then over here we're going A, G and then C. And so we get a nice variation in the harmonies here, because essentially E is an E minor chord in the key of A, and C is a major chord, so we're getting two different feelings at the end of each bass progression. Okay, yeah, so let's have a look at the sound design of this. I'm going to turn all of the plugins off, and then I'll take you through the sound. So we are only working with one oscillator here, and it's a really simple patch. There's like pretty much no modulation other than the filter frequency that's happening. So this is how it sounds. If we turn off the filter, you can hear it's just a plain saw wave. The synth is set to mono, so make sure that mono is toggled on. And then what we need to do is enable the filter and set it to this mode PRD, because initially it'll be clean. So we set that down to PRD, and then toggle this button so that it says 24, because we want that nice steep curve. And then once we've enabled PRD mode, we get this drive function enabled. And that allows us to overdrive the filter, which gives us some nice distortion. Okay, so once the frequency is down here and we've disabled the modulation, this is what you should be hearing if you're at the point of having just set up the filter. So we're just hearing sub at the moment. So what we need is the filter to start opening and closing. So we're going to modulate it with envelope 3 by just increasing the amount here. And you'll need to set up envelope 3 with these same settings for it to sound like mine. So your attack needs to be at 2.866 milliseconds and the decay at 2.33. And once that's set up, you can go into the matrix here, click on frequency in case it's not you don't have this filter 1 frequency displayed here. You'll need to click on this and then it'll pop up over here. And then you can just start to increase this. I think I had it about 60, somewhere around there. Okay, and then the last thing you need to do is just enable the sub, because the sub on this wasn't very strong, so I just turned that on and set it to 4.7 or minus 4.7 dB, and we've got a tone at 18% just to give it some more harmonics. So I'm going to turn that off, and you can hear it when I turn it on. It adds a bunch of sub. Okay, so out of wavetable, we're going into EQ8, and EQ8 is just rolling off a little bit of top end here and boosting a little bit of the mid-range. Probably won't notice much of a difference. Basically gets just a little bit more mids in it. This, I guess I was just experimenting, that's why that curve's there. You don't need that because the synth isn't even really going that high. Okay, then I've got this chorus that I've set up, and basically I just adjusted the rate here and the amount to these percentages. So we want the chorus to be kind of just to spread the sound and not to make it sound detuned, and chorus can do that. So how I like to set up chorus is set the dry wet to 100% and then play the sound, and while it's doing that, I can configure all of these parameters until it sounds nice to my ear. So the first thing I did was to take out the sub from it. So now the chorus is only affecting everything but the sub. And then just play with the rate until it sounds nice, and then the amount. Here at some point it gets too detuned, so you want to kind of bring it to where it sounds nice. And the feedback will start giving it like almost a bit of tonality if we put it too high. and then just bring back the dry wet until you can feel it. Around there sounds good to me. So yeah, you just play with these settings, and it's all about just listening and feeling what feels nice to your ear. All right, then we're going into reverb, and the reverb is just, it's very slightly mixed in. So you can just barely hear it, but it adds a bit of room to it. So here I've taken out a little bit of the low end and the high end. I've made the size really small, 0.32. And then the decay time is also really short. And then I've just brought down the dry wet to 7.9%. So it's just you can just feel it. It's not like soaking the sound in reverb. And then I'm sidechaining it to the kick drum. So how I set up my sidechain is just audio from the kick drum. So choose audio from kick, and then turn on this EQ over here, bring it up to 353 Hertz, and that's because I want the sidechain compressor to only be listening to like the transient of the kick and not the entire body. And in doing that, we get like a nice sharp curve to work with. You can see if I turn this EQ off, you get this really deep long sidechain. And then I just brought down the threshold. I didn't really play with anything else. Oh, the release, I set that to around 50 milliseconds. And then we got bass mono on, and that's just in case some of the chorus bleeds down into the sub frequencies. Shouldn't even really hear a difference. And then this auto filter is there to just sweep out the sub when we transition into the next section of the loop. So we're just automating that to sweep up. Okay, and then next up is the melody. So the melody is made up of 2 layers. And the first layer is this wavetable synth. So let me just turn off all of the plugins we have here. Alright, so again, we're working with a mono synth. Initially this will be set to poly, so you just have to set it to mono. And I'm going to turn off this filter. Okay, so we've got 2 oscillators here, so let me just turn the second one off. So initially this is what the synth sounds like when we load it up. The amp envelope might be different when you load it up, something like this. So I just set the sustain all the way up. And then we need to turn on the second oscillator, and for that we're using white noise. Now the reason for this was I really wanted to have like a white noise texture in the sound. The problem with Wavetable is that it only uses wavetables, so we can't actually generate real white noise, because white noise it's just random frequencies that are constantly being generated, and this is an actual waveform. So you can hear it has like the texture of white noise, kind of. Not really. So that's the reason for the layering of the second synth. So we'll get back to that. But I found this at least gave me a little bit of the texture I was looking for. And then we are using this filter, and here we're doing the same thing. We're using PRD so that we can get that filter drive. And then this one is left on the 12 dB slope. It's a nice gentle slope, and the frequency is at 137. And then in the matrix here, we are using envelope 2. This is controlling the frequency cutoff, just like we did with the bass. So I'm not going to undo this because I've shown already how to do that. But as long as this is at 137, this is at 75, and your envelope shape is this shape with 192 milliseconds decay and 6.2 milliseconds attack, your synth should sound the same as mine. And then you initially will be having no unison, so it'll sound like this. So I just enabled classic unison with 5 voices and 42% amount. So that just detunes it and makes it a bit wider. And then we're going into pedal, which is set to distortion mode, and the gain is set to 3.2%. And this is really just adding a little bit of distortion, a little bit of dirt to the sound. And the dry wet's really low at 17%. If I turn it up, you'll hear it gets a bit stronger. So then the next thing we go into is overdrive. And again, that's just, you can hear how it kind of saturates the top end. So the drive's at 26%, dynamics are all the way down to 0. If you play with the dynamics, you'll hear the change in the sound, and that just basically retains the dynamic of the sound. So if you think of a pluck, it's like the shape of that envelope. It's got this curve. But what happens is if you start to overdrive stuff, it clips it off. And so the top of the waveform might actually be like somewhere down here now instead of up there because it's been clipped. And then you get this really undynamic long sound. And if I turn this to 100%, you'll hear what I mean. So now there's like no dynamics to the sound. Like this, we retain the dynamics. Can't remember what those numbers were at. 11%. Okay, and then we go into reverb. Reverb, I think it's pretty much stock settings. 3.3 seconds, decay, and then dry weight of 23%. So yeah, it's just pretty much just the stock standard reverb. Then we got EQ8, and we're rolling off any sub that's in there. And also like reducing this fundamental because we've got quite a busy bass line. We don't need those frequencies down there to be filled in by this melody. And then we're going into this delay, and the delay is a ping pong delay set to 23%. There's pretty much no other changes I made. Just clicked on ping pong and then made it 23%. So now we get it bouncing around left to right. Again, sidechain, same as on the bass, but just a lot less, so just bring up the threshold. Okay, then the second layer, I basically just got because I wanted that kind of like white noisy texture in it, and I found this sine bleep. It's a preset, so if you search for it, mod amp sine bleep, then you'll find it. And I did adjust this slightly, so initially when you load it up, this is how it sounds. So I took off the reverb and the delay. What was this at? Okay, and then I think that's it. Let's just double check. So we got the brightness up to 100%, yeah. Okay, yeah. So the reverb and delay were on ever so slightly, but I probably meant to turn them off. So you can barely hear them. And that's pretty much all I did to that sound other than processing it outside of there. So I left the overdrive on from the other layer. So I just copied that overdrive down to here. So without the overdrive, so the overdrive really like saturates those frequencies that I like, that high-end grit. And then the overdrive settings, I mean, you can see what they are. I've already explained how the overdrive works. And then we go into the reverb. And I think it's the same reverb that I used above. I just brought down the dry wet. So here it's at 14%. And then a very similar EQ curve. And then we're going into the delay. So pretty much the rest of the chain is the same chain that you see here. Yeah, it's exactly the same, so I don't need to explain that. The only thing we have extra is this filter, which is this auto filter, which is just filtering this in. So you'll hear on this one filters in too.
Just a quick break before we go back to the tutorial. If you find these type of videos helpful, we can highly recommend the PML Academy with over 35 full-length online courses, spreading over topics like writing chords and melodies or arranging your songs to producing entire songs from start to finish. So check out the link in the description to see what's inside the All Courses bundle exactly.
And so that's something I forgot to explain here. We are automating this wavetable frequency in the first lane. So you can see it's going from 20 Hz up to 137. And we're also doing the modulation amount. So here, when you click on the matrix, you can automate this global mod amount here where it says 85%. And that basically just controls how much this modulator is affected. So if I bring this down to 0%, this will be at 0. So you can see here it's not moving, and then it starts to grow further and further if you watch this line. Until it's in its full stage. Okay, so together these sound really nice. kind of got the width and the detune from this one and the texture of this one. And together in the mix, they sound really great. Okay, and then we got this pad, and the pad serves the purpose of basically just harmonizing with the melody and the bass line. So with all of these things together, we're basically building chords. I don't know exactly what chords they are. I just did it by ear. If you just had to compare the bass and this pad, and let me bring this up here, you can see here we're playing an octave. So here it's just A and A. But as we move through these, we start creating chords. So this is doing a G and a D, and the D is the fifth of G. So we're doing like a power chord there. And here we're doing E, C, which is, well, it's not really like a standard chord because the fifth of E is B. So it'll be E, E, G, B. And here we're just doing E and C. So you could just think of this as like a fourth instead of a fifth. Yeah, and then over here it's a bit different. Here we've got the same chord as these two playing together versus over here, sorry, we've got C and C, which is just an octave. Over here we had that fourth. So it's giving two different kind of vibes. And along with the melody, we start getting some really nice harmony going. So yeah, you can see the MIDI for the pad is over here. We're doing A and then D, C, A. And it's basically just following that pattern. And the pad is again, it's wavetable. And basically my thinking was just to make a saw wave and then filter it down and add a bunch of reverb. So we've got basically here a saw wave. And it's getting all buzzy like that because it's got unison on here set to noise mode. So without it, just a saw wave. With it, with 3 voices and amount of 15%. I'm getting that, and here I'm automating the volume just to bring the synth in along with the melody because it's really only there to support the melody. And then I'm filtering it like this, like almost like band passing it, taking out a bit of the lows and almost all the highs. And then here's where it starts to sound like a pad. So I've got a big reverb, the size is at 100 and the decay is at 7 seconds. And then the dry wet's really high at 74%. And then I'm sidechaining it to the kick. Okay, then I made this like little noise sweep. So for this, these are really easy to actually make, and I like making them because then you just get something new that, you know, it's not just from a sample pack. You can tweak it to fit your track perfectly. And if you load up Operator, you can just set this waveform to noise white, and then you get noise, but it'll be mono, like that. So you can spread it using the spread knob here. And then I used auto filter and just set it to bandpass and 24, and then set the frequency up to 12 kilohertz and automated it down to 852. If you set the resonance at 44%, then you should start getting that sweep. And then that's a little bit boring just to have noise like that, so I added a phaser to it and just set the dry wet to 44%. Adds a little bit of interest, and then some reverb. 29-second reverb, so it's a really big reverb. It's also the size at 212, and the dry wet at 48%. And then sidechaining it. So yeah, that adds some nice energy to this. That's without it. Okay, and then we have this little clap fill here, and this is from the new Deep Premium Volume 6 pack. In fact, all the samples coming up in the drum loop are from that pack. So this one is called, it's under the effects section, it's effects number 3, and it sounds like this when you drop it in. So originally it was just a bit dry, so I added some reverb to it, a nice big 6-second reverb, and I just filtered out a little bit of the high end there. Brought the dry wet down to 33%, and now it fills the room and makes it just feel really nice and big. Okay, onto the kick drum. So the kick drum is actually from the loop section, so it's kick loop 7, but it's at 120 BPM, and we're working at 126 BPM. So the problem when you have a loop and you warp it from 120 to 126 is that you get like some smearing or phasing of the transients. Certain kick drums will sound fine, but others won't. So it's fine to use a loop, but if you're using a loop, make sure that it's at least really close to the original BPM. So I just really liked this kick sound, so I just basically took the loop and cut this kick out of it and then repeated it and made sure that warping was turned off, and that way I'm getting like a really nice perfect kick drum. Another thing I did to it was just EQ it a bit. So I really like the sub of this kick and like the character, but in the mix it didn't stick out enough, so you can hear like this. It's not really sticking out of the mix much. And like this, the high end just feels a bit better. Okay, then we go onto this clap, and the clap is made up of 2 layers. So in this style of music, I basically just want claps that are nice and short, and they have a lot of like nice high end on them, like almost like noise. So that's how the clap sounds together, and it's made up of 2 layers. The first one is this clap loop. It sounds like this. And I didn't process this at all, basically just dropped it in. And I like this too because it has a bit of groove in it. It's got these little snares between our main claps. And then this one's got a really nice like character, and basically what it was missing was that high end, that like white noisy snappy high end. But this one has the high end, but it's kind of like lacking the nice like clappy character of this one. So together they complement each other really well. And this one I didn't process at all. It's together I processed them. I just boosted some high end here with EQ8. And so you can hear, if I just solo this clap, sounds nice, but it's just not really jumping out at me. This one really makes it jump out a bit more. Okay, then we've got our perk group over here, and I've basically processed these all together just with a bit of sidechain, and the reason for that is there's quite a lot of stuff happening in this loop with like transients, and I just found that it was changing the character of the kick to, and sometimes like the kick was sounding different, and so the quick solution was to just give it a very quick and light sidechain, and that cleaned it up. Without, like, it's not really pumping, so you can't really notice the sidechain. And I just rolled off the low end because there was a bit of sub in it. Okay, so the first channel inside here is ambience. And I know this is not technically percussion, but I just wanted it to be part of that sidechain, so I dragged it in there. And here, this is the SV ambient gated noise. So this is nice because it just adds a bit of texture to this to the track. So without it, feels a bit dry, and with it we're getting like this, just a nice, it just fills up the sound a little bit more. Okay, then we got this hat, and so this is a hat loop 1, and I just really like the sound of this hat. But what I did to it is, you'll see that I've got it set to beats mode, transients, and then this forward arrow and down to 44, and that's just to shorten and tighten the hat. So without this set down, it's a really long hat. So we can just tighten it by bringing this down. And then this one, I lengthened it a bit more. This one's at 53, and that's just to change the energy of the track as it moves through. So for the first, I think 4 bars, it's tight, and then it opens up, and you can hear how the energy changes when the hat opens up. Okay, then we've got 2 more hat loops, and I just named them hat alt, and I just wanted to basically fill in the hat groove, because if I turn them off, there's not much else really happening in the high end in terms of like groovy stuff. So adding this hat loop over here That really helped fill it out a bit. And then along with this one, so now you have this like unpredictable but nice and groovy full hat loop with all of them together. And then the last loop that we had is this texture loop, and I called it low perk because it's quite low down. And I really like this loop. It sounds so different in the context of the track. It almost reminds me of, I don't know if you've listened to a lot of Deadmau5, you'll hear like often he has like this percussion that sounds almost like somebody doing that sound with their mouth, like a kind of a sound. And so just if you just pay attention to this in the mix, you'll hear what I'm talking about. I just love that. I think it was like more happy accident than anything. So yeah, this is just happening on all the 16. So this is one of the first loops I added, and it grooves so nicely with the kick and the bass, which is why I chose it initially. So if I solo the kick and the bass in this loop, they just add such a nice texture and really helps the groove. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this tutorial. There's no other processing or anything I did. That's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned a lot. All the drum samples come from Deep Premium Volume 6, so if you don't have that yet, be sure to grab it. It's in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.